Hello, good evening, everybody. So today we have a guest on that's pretty exciting. We normally have people, hypnotherapists coming in just to share their techniques and things. And occasionally we get to have someone on that, is unique, special. We've had healers on and different modalities. So today we have Hone, who has got a big story to share. Also has written lots of books, and I was looking, runs retreats up north and overseas, which is kind of exciting for us here in New Zealand. So welcome, Hone.
Thank you, Justine. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, cool. So of course, first, just talk a little bit about yourself maybe, and kind of how you got into the journey of what you're doing. And of course, that journey led you into possibly what you were doing before your experience that you had, and how it's changed you into what you're doing now. Really neat to hear your story.
Yeah, well, it did happen in pretty much in the blink of an eye. I would like to say that it was unexpected, but it wasn't. I had previously been getting warning signs, which, being a typical male, I never went to the doctor at all, but I was passing out, and I put it down to low blood pressure at the time.
Yeah.
So I just kind of thought I could take care of it myself. So that was over a period of 3 years prior to the big one happening. And I think I had about 3 or 4 collapses in that period, about over 3 years, I think.
Yeah.
And but on November the 13th, 2008 is when my heart stopped.
Yeah.
And my life changed for the better. But I came from a corporate world, so I was pretty into materialism, and I was a bit of a schmuck, so to speak. And I think I was probably chasing my tail, like I perceive now, from an observationary point of view, how much of the world lives. I'd lost 10 years of my memory, which sounds quite traumatic, but to me it was a blessing, because it allowed me to commence this new journey with clear eyes and a clear heart and a clear conscience, knowing what that journey entailed for me going forward. And it kind of culminated in a period where I knew that I was different. I knew that I had gathered some sense of, I think, acquiring or reacquiring my sixth sense, or a sixth sense. I wouldn't say I was a spiritual person per se, completely in my old life. But then this new journey that I embarked on from the time I woke from the coma, I was in the notion that I wanted to cultivate and take care of that sixth element that I just reveled in. I just absolutely loved being in that realm, and just following my heart. It sounds easy, but it wasn't at that time, because friends and family who knew you previously in your old life were wanting me to get back into my business world, my corporate world again. And because I had no knowledge about it, I was more vehemently motivated to pursue that aspect of just following my heart. And I don't like using too much the word hope, but I just trusted that what I experienced on the other side going forward would take care of me going forward. And so it's been a big change in my life.
So for people for people listening here that don't know, what Hone is talking about is a near-death experience he had. You had it in 2013, was it?
2008.
2008. Yeah. Awesome. And then from there, of course, I can imagine, the change, not only losing 10 years, but having a connection and seeing the world in a completely different way on returning. Yeah. So you've just written a book on the experiences that you had during. How long did you have in that space where you were in between, if that's what you would call it? I don't know what you'd call it.
It's a very tricky question, that one. It's a good question.
Yeah.
Because number one, it challenges the beliefs that many of the world have acquired or accumulated during their life. Is the preeminent question: is there anything beyond death? Is there anything beyond this existence that we're currently in now? And so I think that if we look to I guess embark on this new passage, it entails an enormous amount of diligence and courage and tolerance as we go forward. And my day generally is just about treading lightly on the earth and just taking life timelessly, because time on the other side, to me, it felt like months I was there, because I was seeing this is another one as well, past lives, the area of past life journey. And I didn't know anything about past lives, but I managed to see a fair chunk of my past lives. And I think the most incredible thing about that journey is that when I saw those past lives again, it was like before I went into the light, they were just hanging on a dark space out there in the I guess the universal field. It was when I saw these particular past lives, I remembered them like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
So that was quite an emotional experience to revisit those periods again, and to understand more about past lives journey, but also the fact that I was also experiencing that particular journey that I was on. And it wasn't until sometime in that particular journey where my grandfather was the one who was imparting a lot of this information to me about the world, the earth, and the direction and the movement that the earth was going into. So I didn't really think that I was going to go back to earth. In fact, I didn't actually have a desire of wanting to go back to earth, being on the other side. I guess there's many reasons why, but I suppose the main one for me was that I didn't feel like I was in a place of suffering. It was like I've not experienced such a profound feeling of love anywhere in the world. But to experience it on the other side is probably one of the biggest treasures that I will keep close to my heart going forward.
Yeah. I have had an experience myself, and I remember the moment when I left the body, and when I was leaving, because it was caused through trauma, a very traumatic experience. I remember thinking about my children as I was leaving my body, But when I was switched into something different, the amazing sense of love, well, I don't even know if it's called love, but bliss, where just everything dropped away. The feelings, the worries just dropped away. Like they just didn't exist. And I've spoken to a few people recently, even working with one lady today from overseas that is struggling with the coming back, which I'll ask you. She had a near-death experience with that feeling and is now struggling with integration back into life again, which I've heard a couple of people say. So it's interesting how you coped with, because you had such a big experience, not just a moment, but an experience. So they're coming back to the space and reintegration and people and that. Tell us a bit about that. People will be really interested in how that change was, I think.
How that change was for me?
Like, yeah, for you, like the integration back into being back here again and life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I can look back on it now from a place of amusement, because at that particular time I felt like I had to achieve something that I didn't actually know what in the world I was meant to be achieve, what I was meant to achieve. A lot of it was encouragement, coercion from friends and family. They were doing it from a place of love, thinking that you know, I would capture my memory and everything would go back to normal again. But then that wasn't the case, because I just felt this enormous push just to follow my heart inside.
Yeah.
And from then on, I mean, that took a couple of years at least of being able to just allow my family to trust me in the path that I was going on. And I mean, it was a change, but it was a change that I was taking in my stride. I was you know, just living pretty much day by day, to be honest. And I think a lot of that part of my rehabilitation was the fact that I was just drawn more so to living in nature than I was living in the so-called corporate world, to where I had come from.
So doing the things that you do now, which is the retreats and things like that, is that something that happened after the experience? What were you like? I mean, of course, you've got the 10 years that were the hidden 10 years, but was spirituality something that you were interested in earlier on?
Yeah, I mentioned it before. I got little touches of my spiritual aspect of me, but I think when there's this proclivity to, it's like these expectations of striving and getting ahead, to achieving something, to become someone, it's an enormous alluring. And so when it comes to the time in your life where you realize that you're in a matrix, I would hesitate without a doubt that 95% of the world is entrenched deeply in the matrix. I recognized the matrix for what it was. I realized that I too, in my previous life, was also the matrix. And I knew that for me to fulfill the missions that was imparted to me by my grandfather at that time, because he gave me the opportunity when he asked me, which again, it felt like I was there for a few months, one day, you know, what did I want to do? Did I want to return back to the earth? And upon accepting that mission that was granted to me by my grandfather, who is one of my angels, and my other family on the other side as well too, including my son, was to live in a way that I could be able to impart some of that sharing of my experience, and not so much say to others that this is what your journey is going to be like, because I don't know. I'm only sharing it from my own personal experience, and I know that through listening, other people that have had the same or very similar experiences, there is always a slight difference in their experience as compared to mine, and so I can only do it from my own particular experience of what occurred, what was imparted, and what prepared me to embark on my new life going forward. So yeah, it's a very unique experience, and it's something that I would just treasure. I'd always treasure on a daily basis now.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in here, especially in Hypnosis New Zealand, that do past life regression. So as a modality, for healing. So when you look at your, just for the people listening, I know quite a few on here actually are do that as part of their healing as past life regression with people. With you experiencing it, and did it change you being able to actually see and experience those things? Those different times, different realities. How did you experience them?
How did I experience it? Yeah, well, yeah, there was a part where my, the out of body experience, seeing the paramedics and the working on you, hearing the defibs going. I think I had 8 defibs at that time, and 3 shots of adrenaline into the heart, and a whole concoction of drugs that they said they'd used every drug in their bag, and they put everything they had in their bag into me. Hearing the bones cracking, I think, was a big one as well too. Just seeing them working on this, I was referring to myself on the floor as that person, because I kept thinking, if that's me down there lying on the ground wearing my clothes, well, who am I observing the whole scene laid out before me? So I kept referring to my body lying on the ground as being that person. And so going to seeing my body again, being rushed to the hospital and the ICU, and then those periods of days where I was just hanging around my body. And then it just occurred where all of a sudden my body just drifted, or my spirit drifted, and it felt like I was going on an escalator into the blackness beyond me, and the scene of my body and my family around me in the ICU was just getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, but this incredible space beyond was just black, total black. And it was like a whole bunch of pictures on an art gallery wall, just laid out to this incredible horizon. And each time I peered into every picture, there I saw a past life, and then another and another and another. And so, for example, when I was a child, I've talked about this before. I used to say to my mother, "Mama, I want to build an igloo," and she would laugh and laugh and look at me crazy, as if to say, "What do you mean? You've never ever touched snow before? You've never seen snow before. What in the world do you want to build an igloo, and you don't even know how to build an igloo. And I said, I do. I really do know how to build an igloo. Well, one of those past lives, there was more than one actually. There were several past lives where I did live in snow, and I remember not just that one, but there was so many others. For example, dancing around fires, living during a series of pagan lifetimes long ago, living in the desert. As I mentioned before, there was a time I spent with Jesus, but I don't remember him being referred to as Jesus. But coming back, I looked back, realizing that this friend whom I had cultivated this enormous deep friendship and love for, it went both ways. When I was living in this village, I was a single man. I lived with my two sisters lived with me in my house, and I came upon this large gathering of people where Jesus was speaking, but he was being persecuted, and he had looked quite disheveled and tired and withdrawn after the abuse that he was getting. And I just took him under my arm and brought him home, allowed him just to spend some time in respite and just to have a bath and just to give him everything that he needed to get himself back on the road again. And you know, those particular nights with him, they were all, again, memories that I cherish as well too. And so, yeah, that's just a touch of some of those past lives.
Yeah. And having those memories now in your life, how has that made your life better or different, having that knowledge and understanding of those lifetimes? How does that play out now for you?
That's a good question. It's like it's enhanced life with much more fruition, in the sense that I'm looking at my old life before, and I was trying to live life thinking that I was complete, but also a little bit incomplete, and I was trying to better myself in the eyes of myself and other people. And this is what it's all about. It's living to the expectations of others, whether you're close to them or not. And then realizing that it was like a jigsaw puzzle that was incomplete. And so in returning into this new life, I felt like that I had a lot more pieces of the puzzle that made my journey a lot more complete, in the fact of where I was going. And I mean, when we are either entrenched or immersed, or we are affected slightly or not in the ravages of the so-called matrix, it's like trying to avoid cowslip being thrown at you. You're just having to brush it off, clean yourself up, or, you know, dust and grime on your windscreen of your car. It's being able to recognize those elements of the matrix and being able to say, this is not conducive to my life, and it's now time just to settle, breathe, take some moments of cleansing and regathering this self back into the soul rather than into the head, and cleansing, purifying, and regathering, energizing oneself to then be able to embark going forward. So it's a constant daily necessity, I find, in my life now.
Yeah. Is that something that you teach in the retreats that you hold, like those processes?
perhaps, I mean, I don't, I've never wanted people to ever think that I'm above them, or I know more than them. All it is just laying out a smorgasbord of ideas, perhaps, or premonitions that might pique their interest, and they can take it or leave it. But it's generally based around a series of questions. I love the questions aspect of it.
Yeah. Awesome. So does anyone have any questions? I love that you talked about the past life, because as I said, there's a lot of people here that, and will be listening, that do past life regression as a modality. And it's nice hearing how having that experience with the past lives, how it has influenced you now, made you feel more complete. So it'll make people feel good about, you know, giving that process to others or doing that modality. Yeah. So Lily, you've got a question? You can just unmute.
Hi. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Hi, Lily.
Hey, honey. Very fascinating to listen to. Thank you. One question, with past life regression, one of the interesting things that can be realized is that those in our current life and how they showed up in a past life, and just sort of dealing with the energies, the residue of those characters as they're showing up in this life, because they really belonged in that past life. And just wondering what experiences you may have had with those that may be in your current life, that and how you might have processed that, having had this experience.
Okay. Yeah, there was I wouldn't say there was a multitude, a lot of people that I remembered in my new life or in other lives where I had lived or experienced or shared with them in previous past lives. I wouldn't say there was a lot. There were, because when they come back in a different body. So it's like trying to recognize a Ferrari in a Ford Ranger. It's a different body. So all you're really recognizing is the essence, or in Māoridom we call it the ahua. In India they refer to it as the atma. It's the atma, the atua, or the ahua, that I recognize in a person as being something that's instantly recognizable, that I have connected with that particular atma or ahua from a previous life. And it can be quite profound as well too.
Any other questions?
Yeah, great talk, Richard. Yeah, I don't know if you're aware that the UVA, which is the University of Virginia in the USA, have been studying past life for 50 years. There's some great talks on YouTube, and I don't know if you've ever been in touch with them, or yeah, just to tell you a story. It's a group of scientists who are really interested in it, and they've recorded over 2,500 cases.
Sounds interesting. When I woke up from the coma, I saw my telephone, or my family gave me my telephone. I actually didn't know how to work it because I'd lost 10 years of memory, and all I remember from it was that it just kept beeping, and so incessantly. And so I think I remember throwing it into the ocean in Orienta Bay in Wellington afterwards, and I lived without technology for close to 14 years. So I wouldn't say I was a recluse. I just enjoyed my time more so in nature as being more of a reflection of truth than it was being in the existence of electricity and television and yeah, that social world of yeah, I suppose I can call it the matrix, I guess. And I just didn't feel very replenished being immersed in that world. So I just really, I got most of my sustenance was from nature, and I still do now.
Nice.
So I listened to a podcast today where you had mentioned that you have done a lot of travel overseas now, journeys overseas, even running retreats and things over there in different places.
Yeah, I guess yeah, I wasn't really interested in wanting to write a book at the start, because there were lots of personal there were personal passages in that journey on the other side that I mean, one of my children passed, and so it was an absolute privilege to meet him again, although he had grown up, because he was a baby, 5 weeks old when he passed. He was a twin, but when I saw him, I think he was about 14 or 15 years of age. He was the same age as his twin brother, and back on Earth. And a lot of the information that my grandfather had shared with me, again, was for me, and I didn't really feel comfortable being able of wanting to share that kōrero, that communication to the world, or people whom I either didn't know or didn't trust, because I didn't feel like that I wanted to be part or looked upon as being something that I'm not. And so I kind of kept that part of, because when anyone said to me, do you remember anything from the time that your heart stopped to the time that you woke up from the coma? Do you remember that period? I would just say I do, but I don't want to share it. But I think it was through the insistence of the publisher in the States. It was just constant. I was writing in a journal passages of my experience, and then I think it was 5 years later, it culminated in me actually putting those notes from my journal into that first book, which became the first book. And I think once the wheels had started turning, I didn't want to stop after that. I just wanted to keep writing and sharing and doing what I came back for, and that was to impart the love on earth, or planting the seeds on earth of what it was like on the other side, which is my preeminent goal now, or my aim is to do that now.
Beautiful. Well, you're doing that tonight. Awesome.
Thank you.
Yep, Stephanie.
Thanks for sharing your story or your experience. What I would like to understand is, why do you think some have an experience like you had, where you had the out-of-body experience where your heart stopped, so you physically died, but then came back to do what you're doing now? And why are others having a final death and they have to wait until they're getting reincarnated to do the good jobs? Do you know what I mean? Like who decides you know, is it time to send you back, or is it time to keep you there? I just try to get my head around it, and I wonder if you can help me to understand why you didn't die and then reincarnate another time, but instead, you know, you had that glimpse, and then you had the message, and then you came here again to go, you know, to make a difference.
Oh, that's a big question, that one. I think there's a couple of questions in that question, but Well, I think the first question I think that's got to be asked first is, what is death? What is death?
Mm.
Is it the body dying? And if the body does die, then what is that which continues? What is that continues? And whether the spirit comes back into that same body, into the same body again, or into a new body, child at birth, rebirth, or what's called a walk-in. One, the child at birth is not a walk-in, but as a walk-in coming in and just, you've just found yourself in a completely new body. Sorry, in a walk-in, you are the same body, but you have a profound change that's occurred in you. Who decides? Is that your question? Who decides?
Well, yeah, to not so much who decides, but what's the point? And some, it gets delayed and they have to reincarnate, and they have to start a new life again. And some, like in your case, well, the walk-in thing probably makes sense. Is it what it felt like to you, that you were still having the same body, but because you had such a change in personality that somehow it felt a little bit like a walk-in?
I wouldn't say that I changed my personality. I was still the same personality. It's just that I just had a rejig. I just had my defaults restarted again.
So just a different perspective of things, or different views, but you still felt like the same person. Just different views to life. Yeah.
Very much so, yeah. So what was the question again? Sorry.
Well, why do some people, why is it final? Their heart stops and that's it, and they have to, either they don't reincarnate or they might reincarnate later on in life. And why are some people having the near-death experience, are out of it for a little bit, but then, join life again and get another go there and then, rather than having to wait?
Right. Okay, one word you used pricked me immediately, and it was the word final that you used. And there was no final for me. It was just the progression of a journey. Again, I keep coming back to this question, what is death? Because a multitude of the world think of death as being something to be afraid of. It's almost similar in religion, where a great deal of people who follow a particular religion, there are elements of fear that come into that acquiring of this belief, this conditioning. And I'm saying that from a place of love, is that death is a horrible thing, a dark thing, a morbid thing. It's something that's of the unknown. And so they live their entire life living in fear on the earth, in their living body, but they cover it in masks. I think I talk about it in my first book, where I didn't know at the time, but I was wearing a whole series of different masks in my old life with different groups of people or a person, because that's how they know me, was from that particular mask, which wasn't me in the first place, if you know what I mean. And I remember there were the lyrics of a Billy Joel song called, I think it was called The Mask, and it says, and when I read those lyrics, that was me to a T, and that was, well, we all have a face that we hide away forever, and we take them out and show ourselves when everyone is gone. Some are satin, some are silk, some are some are steel, and some are leather, but they're the faces of the stranger, and we love to try them on. And that in itself tests us, it pushes us to saying, get rid of everything, get rid of all the masks, get rid of all the idealizing, the working towards a conclusion, towards eliminating fear, and understanding true death for what it is. Because when we can understand death for what it is, we can then be able to live expressively in a state of goodness, curiosity, which is a big part of consciousness, awareness, being able to live in the world in such a capacity that we don't take anything to heart, anything.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like it gave you the opportunity to live in your own truth without putting an act on, or without, I don't know, I guess we fall under conditioning, isn't it? It's no longer unconditional love. It's like, now you have to be a good man, now you have to be, you know, earning a lot of money, now you have to do that and that and that. And of course, what you're saying, when the fear of death is also gone, which is indoctrinated, so it keeps us in line. So really, then there's no pressure at all. Then you can just live in your truth. And I think the vulnerability in itself is that, you know, what you see is what you get, right? You're not hiding behind a mask, but, you know, that's that self-acceptance, and not needing other approval, or living in that matrix and performing how society indoctrinates us to perform, isn't it? So lucky you, living in your truth.
I think that this again is only and I wouldn't say it's a belief. It's more, I'm just assuming that that would be the case in all sentient beings on the planet at the moment, humans. But again, I use that word sentient because animals are not too dissimilar in a spiritual sense than we are, mammals included. I have this incredible affinity with animals now and mammals, which it took me then to wanting to give up meat. I didn't want to eat another sentient being. I think to not take everything that's coming forth as being the ultimate bedazzled truth, but to be able to say, maybe this is pretty much aligning to my journey in my life, that I can take out for myself going forward.
Good, thank you.
You're on mute. Justine.
Hello.
Oh, sorry, I was talking to myself then. I was just going to say, Ariana, do you want to ask your questions out loud, or do you want me to read them? I'll just wait a second if Ariana turns the mic on then. Oh, yeah, here we go.
Hello, I can ask my questions if that's all right.
Yeah.
So, Hone, kia ora.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Since returning, have you been drawn to a particular religion, modality, or spiritual alignment?
What do you mean by modality?
It could be, I use that as a very broad term, Hone. It probably is in alignment with spiritual umbrella, any of the modalities within that, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. It was actually quite amusing. It was big news at the time. I mean, I didn't know that I had been one of the longest in the world to be without a heartbeat. I was just this Maori boy from a small town, just trying to get back on my feet again. And the numbers of religions that contacted me, I think the first one was I don't know if they're religious or not, but the Masonic Lodge were the first to contact me. And yeah, they picked me up and took me to the lodge, and I walked around, and I remember looking inside this pretty stark looking building, and it felt very staid, very gothic, and again, it was having to answer a whole bunch of questions, and I didn't realize that such a community or cult lived like that. But then after that, it was yeah, a handful of other religions as well. Even, I won't name them all. One of them actually gave me a certificate. I'm now a certified Buddhist, and I didn't actually ask to become a Buddhist. But I can travel the world now if I need to go into a Buddhist country and show that I'm a law-abiding Buddhist. But I find that quite funny, but I thank them for it. Answering the question about whether I took a religious path, no, I didn't. I'm not part of any group, cults, religion. It has, I think it has to be known that religion is, and it's religios, comes from the Latin word religios, which means the study of that which is of the divine. When we look at religious scriptures, it always has a sense of expectations and upholdments, and it's almost like a very soft, threatening way of, you know, you do this, this will happen to you, and blah de blah de blah. And I didn't want. It didn't feel right to me at all. There were aspects of various religions that really warmed my heart and touched me, and that's all they needed to do to realize the path that I'm on at the moment. So I guess the path that I'm on is just living in that spiritual realm and being able to propagate that aspect of ourselves. No, I'm not talking just about myself, but us as a collective, is being able to ensure that we re-tap into that sixth sense, or so-called sixth sense, and being able to keep ourselves on a daily basis operating in such a way that we are pretty much keeping that atma, or the ahua part of ourselves, the soul, as the front seat driver. Because in the world we see today is that it's predominantly the mind, or the brain, is the one that's entrusted mostly on the earth in the matrix predominantly, whereas I come from the view that it's It's not a brain thing whatsoever. It's not a thinking thing. It's not a thing of accumulating memories and sentimentalities and those misdirections, I suppose I can call it. So the only way that I can see that particular mirror is when I'm in nature, by a river, yeah, in the forest, at the beach, on my own, and just meditating out, in the garden. The spiritual aspect, I think, was a big part, because when I woke up from the coma, of course, and when you're in a hospital, and particularly in an ICU, you see a lot of activity, a lot of calm tension, I should say, because there's all sorts of activities that are going on. But I was seeing not only workers in the hospital, I was also seeing dead people in the hospital as well. So that was something that I was finding very, very difficult to control in my new life going forward. And I have a number of stories which I share in my first book of some of those stories. I might even share one tonight, but it's predominantly a spiritual path that I take above anything else.
Oh, thank you, Hone. I hope you don't mind me asking another one. You mentioned matrix a few times, and I just was wondering if you would give me a bit more description of what that is.
I don't know fully what the matrix is. All I can see it is a clear delineation of what is false and what is truth, what is fictional and what is real. I had a television in my old life, like many people did, but I remember, well, I don't remember having a house, but when I was coming out of the hospital, my brother took me back home, and I asked him where we were going, and he said, "I'm taking you home." And the last time I ever heard that word home since waking from the coma was where I had been on the other side. That was my reference to what I knew and still do refer to home as being. And when he's looked at, and I looked at him and I said, "Home? What do you mean home?" And he said, "You have a house." And straight away, this enormous wave of disbelief and shock came over me, thinking, how come I don't remember this? And I mean, when I got to the house, I knew straight away. So, oh yeah, I do remember this. But seeing this television in the middle of the lounge, and it was on at the time, and I just hated, absolutely deplored that energy, and that told me, it signaled to me that this was not conducive to aligning myself in the way that would sustain and fulfill my ahua deep in here. I didn't want it to be squashed with silly commercials and ridiculous programs, and then watching what they refer to as the news. I had no interest in that whatsoever. And so I was just trying to work out why humanity, why man lived their lives relishing, or so-called relishing, that world of social interaction that didn't really evoke or invoke a filter within ourselves to say, this is just a waste of my time. It's a waste of my life, spending this valuable life sitting in front of a large screen and listening to a whole lot of what I could see at that time was just blah, blah, blah. So that's probably what I would refer to the Matrix as being. But again, some say that it can also be governmental fields as well too. And what governments, so-called democratic governments or dictatorship governments, view the wealth and well-being of humanity to trust in them and they'll take care of you. And I could see pretty clearly that I wasn't really interested in trusting anyone beyond myself to take care of myself. So I think that was my determination of what I could see as being what the Matrix was, and what living in this paradigm of truth that I relished.
Awesome, thank you. Oh, we've nearly had an hour. Is there any other questions? I know someone might have been, was it you, Rachel?
Hi, I just wanted to ask whether or not, Hane, whether you could elaborate on what you saw in that time from when you passed over to when you came back. Please.
We don't have the time.
Yeah.
You do have a book though, Hane, don't you? I did share the book on the Amazon link with the group beforehand, for people, and I think your book does go into the experience, doesn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't share all of it, because I mean, when you finish a book and then you look back at it and you think, oh, there was that I wanted to share and I never did, and this and this and this and this, and
so there'll be part 2 and part 3.
And then I ended up writing another book, and then coming away from that thinking, oh, there was other information I wished to share. I suppose it just, when is the end? How long is a piece of string? So so the question was, can I share a little bit more about that journey on the other side? Is that what it was?
Yes, please. Yeah. Just as little or as much as you feel to.
Yeah, okay. I'd do it as succinctly, and I'll condense it down as best as I can. The looking down, the period of looking down at your body, I think, you know, when we visualize or imagine what it could be like looking down and seeing your own body lying on the ground, it's almost brings a conjurement of fear or spookiness to it. But it's not. It's like flying Emirates business class. Everything is well taken care of, actually, to be honest. It's you know, I can't say it would be the same for others. I know that there are spirits that are stuck on the earth. I see them often, that are just wandering around, lost, and I feel for them more than silly people who just are caught up in the Matrix and go back to living the Matrix, thinking that's normality, thinking that's the pureness of life. But the lost souls are the ones that I do try to help as much as possible, and those that are on the verge of committing suicide as well, which I've done a lot of work in that field, and so I know a little bit about that. In terms of the journey and seeing your body, all it is, it's coming from a place of observance. You see something that looks like you, a person, a body that looks pretty accurately like you, but there's this instant reaction, which is, that's not that's not me down there, because if that's me, who am I looking down on that body? So I always refer to that person as me as being that person who is that, and wishing him all the best of luck. Good luck to him if he makes it or not. I remember saying that. And so it was like popcorn moments, you know. It's just everything was happening before my eyes, and it was all taken care of. It did break my heart to a point where I could see lots of tensions, lots of sadness, but then there was so much happening that you were taken away from that particular scene, from the ICU, and then slowly disappearing upwards into this escalator, into this darkness, and seeing these pictures on a wall in this dark space, and looking behind me, and there was this like this white light, like a pinprick of a light, that just continued to get bigger and bigger and bigger as I was being taken closer and closer towards it. So as I was experiencing and reconnecting again with those different past lives, and I was seeing the light in the distance getting bigger, but as I got closer to the light, I could see silhouettes standing in the doorway. And as I got closer and closer, I started to recognize that it was my koro and kuia, my grandfather and grandmother, and some of my aunties and nannies. In Māoridom, we have nannies that take care of tamariki from time to time, and I don't know if you know the word whāngai. So we were always out with other nannies, and I became quite attached to a few of those nannies growing up as a child, and to reacquaint with them was just such a thrill. It was such a privilege, and to see them looking young, to see them without their ailments, to see them without their wrinkles, and to see the beauty. I remember seeing my grandmother. She just looked so radiant and glowing, how I remembered her to be. And of course my son, who had grown up. But going to this place, I'm not going to refer to it as, I'm not going to give it a name, whether it's Nirvana or Shangri-La or Heaven or Jeanette or any name that may come from a religion. I just call it a very, very beautiful place. And the most serene, love-filled place that just epitomized the polarity of how the minds of man has become so dark on the earth, but yet in this incredible domain of purity and aroha, that it just uplifted me in such a timeless and peculiar way that it felt like I was living in the past, but also living in the present and the future, all rolled in one. Particularly when my grandfather was imparting the sharing of whether if I chose to go back, this is what was going to happen, both in my life and both on the earth, in order to bring this realm on the other side on the earth and making it almost like a heaven on earth. And that potential I can see on the earth clearly, very, very clearly. There is a lot of work, there's a lot of shifting that needs to go on, and there is a lot of letting go that needs to occur individually as well as globally to being able to then recapture again what our the stage is set for us to start renewed again. It's almost like being a newborn baby again. We start at square one and living that life of truth from here in our atma, our ahua, in our soul. And you're constantly cleaning all the shit that comes your way from you on a daily basis to keep yourself as in line and in tune in that purity as best as you possibly can without becoming indoctrinated, if you know what I mean, into the ravages and that darkness of the earth. You know, I get asked other questions about well, if your family is still alive, that means that they obviously haven't reincarnated into their new life journeys. And I said, well, how do you know that? Could it be possible that an element of the ahua or the atma, the soul, remains in this place, and another part of that atma, ahua, and soul is embedded into a new body, into the next journey, and so on and so on? We just don't know. And this is what I love about the world of spirituality, is that I love that mystery. You know, we don't have all the answers to the questions, because that is how magical and mysterious the spiritual world is. And I love it, absolutely love it.
Beautiful, thank you.
It was beautiful. Thank you.
Awesome, everyone. Well, we've gone over an hour. Want to thank you so much for coming on with us on air today, sharing your wisdom, your stories, and even just your energy, like sitting in the space today with us. It's just been a really nice space to be for the last hour. Yeah. Cool. So I'm going to stop recording,
Thank you,
guys,
Justine.
and then